Now, former Gauteng MEC for Health, Dr. Bandile Masuku, has been found guilty of bringing the ANC into disrepute by the party's Gauteng Disciplinary Committee. Last week, his attempt to have the Special Investigating Unit report into PPE corruption set aside failed. Masuku was fired from his job in October last year after the SIU found he's failed to provide oversight at the health department. This was in connection with alleged acts of corruption during the procurement of PPE by the province. He joins me now in studio. Dr. Masuku, thank you so much for your time. Are you good?
I'm good, and good afternoon to your viewers. Thanks for having us on the show. Last
week, you tried to have the findings of the SIU report set aside by the High Court. You failed in that bid. Today we're hearing that the party's disciplinary committee has found you guilty of bringing the party into disrepute. That's a double blow. How are you feeling?
No, I think a bit disappointed, but though we take the judgment, the court ruling, with mixed emotions, majorly with excitement, particularly of the positive aspects that the judge in the ruling had to capture, which in essence dismisses most of the notion that the SIU could have said initially in their report in October. Because if you recall, the SIU had actually said a lot of things which were untrue, and which the judge in actual fact has said to those findings has reduced them to be mere opinions, which is one of the good things. And what also the judgment had said, it said that evidence in front of the court didn't show any involvement in corruption, nepotism, or demonstrate any benefit from the irregularities that actually occurred with the PPE. With the ANC, I'm not sure if the ANC had communicated officially the DC outcomes, because I'm one of those who, in a real sense, a disciplined member, I would be able to reflect on the DC announcement if already they've actually officially announced it. But if they haven't, I would still withhold my views on the point.
So I've looked at the findings of the disciplinary committee, and one of them is that because they found you guilty of bringing the party into disrepute, it's for you to step aside from the PEC. I just want your initial response from that. Are you planning on appealing that finding of stepping aside from the PEC? How are you feeling particularly about this ANC process?
As a member and a disciplined member, I would have to follow through what the DC have said. But the Code of Conduct and the Constitution of the ANC doesn't have a sanction that is called step aside in its code of conduct or in its schedule actually for sanctions. And it's something that will be very interesting to see if a National Disciplinary Committee or the National Disciplinary Appeals Committee would find differently from what the provincial DC have said.
So you're planning on appealing that outcome?
Most definitely. I've processed the application. I've given notice of appeal, and it's something that will then follow up with the organization.
So you've spoken about the High Court ruling last week and how it exonerates you, but that's on the part of corruption. When you look at what the SIU actually found against you, which is the dereliction of duty, that particularly that you failed to exercise oversight over the department during the irregularities in the procurement of PPE, the judge was quite harsh on you, and he called you unprofessional. He accused you of dereliction of duty. He says you should have read the email that you had requested on the list of suppliers for PPE. How do you feel about that particular finding of the High Court? Because it really, really does cast doubt on your integrity and your professionalism.
Yeah, I guess that it's something that all of us would have to engage in, particularly those who are in executive positions or generally as individuals, because having a PA and having staff in your office that in actual fact read your correspondence, becomes a matter that you must also do the same. In the case of this email in particular, there was indication from the staff members in the office and the CFO herself that they've actually processed the request and they've already sent the information that was required by Motsepe Foundation forward, which is one of the reasons that I didn't get an opportunity to reread it, because that action was already done and it was a tick in my box that forwarding the email actually could have happened.
Why didn't you go through the email?
There are a number of incidences that occurred during that day, during that particular day of the 1st. I think one key amongst them is that at night of the 1st, I was from the NHLS where we were launching the vehicles, the mobile vehicle testing vehicles with the minister. And when I got home, I got news of passing away of a friend's father who I had to be with the family throughout the night. And when I came back early hours of the morning of the 2nd, I had to then wake up, of course, again to be with the minister to receive other donations. And this recollection of these events, it's a recollection that occurred over a period of time, because at the instant that I was shown the email by the SIU, I couldn't recall even seeing the email. And I had to, in a way, jog my memory with the staff, with the assistance of the staff and other people, to say where is actually what could have happened with that email particularly.
Do you think it's going to be difficult for people to believe that you had forgotten when you were asked by the SIU initially? Because the explanation you've given us wasn't given to the SIU when they interviewed you in August, and you're saying that you didn't have any recollection of that email, and which is why the judgment, the judge in the High Court said that was a dereliction of duty. It showed lack of professionalism. Do you think it's going to be easy for people to accept that you didn't remember the details you just told us now?
I think the issue is that I've got evidence. There is physical evidence that actually exists about, the issue about the request of the information that we've sent through to Motsepe Foundation. The actual follow-ups that were done by the Motsepe Foundation, which is basically what I think the SIU could have done to examine that particular actual evidence. But secondly is that on hindsight, when we went for our first interview, we could have actually be part of our rights, to request that questions and information required for that interview could have been prepared before, and I think in our own haste of trying to, in real sense, prove ourselves and be compliant with what the law is saying or what the SIU was requesting, we went there unprepared, and it was almost an ace card that the SIU pulled out and said, do you know this email? And it was after a 3-hour interview, at the end of the interview. And of course, I think with all the emotions around it, I wouldn't have had an immediate a recollection of the events.
But it was a straightforward question, Dr. Masuku. How is it that you didn't remember that your best friend's father had passed away and you were out helping until 3 a.m. in the morning?
I'm certain that we have not been fired, and if you have been fired, we have went through the whole emotion, the roller coaster of being accused of being corrupt and whole range of emotions. Those are some of the few elements that you could be able to actually forget, But of course, when the jogging of the memory came in, it became easy even to recollect even the basic of what in actual fact occurred between the 1st and the 3rd of April.
All right. I want to ask about Premier David Makhura and the decision that he took to fire you. So he relied on this report by the SIU, but there was nothing really binding the Premier to fire you based on that report. How do you feel about how he handled this?
Of course, he has got a constitutional obligation and a constitutional mandate to be able to hire or fire MECs. And I don't think that it's something that I would forever or have a problem with, because even when he invited me to be part of his cabinet, there was not really an explanation given, but he said he has confidence in me. And I think I took it in my stride that, if you are out of favor and you are not producing what is required as the Premier would have wanted, I would have accepted the decision.
Yeah, but I think that's how you politicians answer us. How do you feel about the shifting?
Of course, I was disappointed because I couldn't complete or even be part of the whole, response that, the whole strategy and the tactics that we have used. Where essentially I was part of a team, that produced them and produced brilliant results, particularly as it relates to the first wave. And I think would have done much better on the second wave. And I think the department, in terms of its shaping, and its progress, going forward post-COVID, the disappointment is that I'm not going to be party to it, but I'm certain as a member of parliament in the legislature and as a member of the civil society and a member of the ANC, I'll still be able to contribute in that particular platform.
We're out of time, but I have to ask you about the impact this has had on your political future. This has cast doubt on your integrity, and you have been seen as one of those young, dynamic, vibrant politicians that have a great future in the space of politics. Do you think this has killed your political career? Is it possible to come back from something like this?
Most definitely, the whole posture that the SIU put up, on the whole matter, particularly around the issue of their findings, was pretty much difficult. And it bemised my, my integrity. But I think the outcomes of the High Court in terms of its call on the corruption, my not being involved in nepotism or not actually benefiting, for me, that was one of the key aspects actually to it. And for the SIU findings to be reduced to be just mere opinions, and for me, that's one of the key positive aspects from this actual judgment.
Yeah, but the perception has already been created about...
It means that I have to continue to be part and committed to, in serving the ANC, in serving the people of Gauteng and of our country, and continue to play my role where I am now, and be as effective as possible.
So you're not going back into private practice?
Not anytime soon, because I've taken a decision that I wouldn't want to multitask or do two things at one go. My space and where I am in terms of my space in life is that I want to contribute to the broader politics, but particularly to the transformation of the healthcare sector and of the higher education sector in general.
Are you going to run for any ANC leadership positions in Gauteng?
If branches are actually and members of the ANC are saying that they see a leader in me and they are confident that I can be able to lead the ANC beyond this term of this PEC, I'll definitely be available to do that.
Dr. Bandile Masuku, I really appreciate your time on ENCA this afternoon. So that is the former Gauteng Health MEC, Dr. Bandile Masuku. Let's move